People are born in a body, but most of them have forgotten that. Now, that is always nature consciousness with them. And everyone thinks their whole body is human consciousness. And then they try to make the whole world into human consciousness. It's very hard to find nature anymore because humans have imprisoned all of it in human frequencies and tried to enslave nature consciousness to do nothing but its human bidding. And of course that's an ecological disaster. Just like if you see, but the same thing is true with your own body. If you carry a cell phone, you are putting human fabricated frequencies that have the intention of domination all through your body all the time. And you are overriding the natural energies of your body and the natural intelligence, the natural conscious intelligence of your body, of all the different, from the cells to the organs to the entire body, and to that body's connection with all other organisms on Earth that happen at an unconscious level. You know, people sometimes learn to change their heartbeat consciously through biofeedback. But, thank goodness you don't have to think about how to make your heart beat all the time with your conscious mind, with your human intentional mind. So the arrogance of the humans has gotten incredibly big. To think the human mind is what matters and can run the whole universe, even to the extent where you're breaking things down into nanotechnology and making one thing into another thing without its permission, ignoring the consciousness of what it was before. And you are doing that to the human selfhood as well, the human organism, the human consciousness that is evil, that is so disconnected from respect for being part of the whole universe, and is this egomaniac that says all that matters is the human mind. That human mind is doing the same thing. It started by enslaving nature beings like the metals, putting them into computers and making their natural function of connecting everything in the universe through their communication of resonance and transmission. It has enslaved that function to only deliver human ideas, human thoughts, human writings, and human ways of digitizing data. It has reduced everything to what the human can do, to dominate everything and recreate everything in its own image. It gets into actually even religious ideas here, that humans are remaking the universe in their own image, and they're doing it digitally. Now, on your world, digital is big, to redo it digitally. On Renal's world, they used nature, and they left the trees there, but they used them to transmit human frequencies that were not always digitized. They were more radionic. Same thing, the same intention though. The tree no longer has the right to be a tree. It is an object to be used by humans, for humans to alter everything in order for them to have a synthetic telepathy among all the humans, which is what your internet really is. This entity of domination has taken over the human mind, the human body. On your world, you've been digitizing even the human DNA, which is the experiences of all your ancestors and all the ancestors of the plants and animals. You've been digitizing those by digitizing the human gene and the animal genes and the plant genes and altering them. We think it's getting to where people do not recognize the human soul. Many people do not at all think the human being has a soul, at least not one that is as powerful as the progressive, quote-unquote, evolutionary, quote-unquote, human mind that is cut off from its seating in its own body and objectified in computers and in the internet. And when you have a soulless internet, it's kicking out all sorts of news stories, as you all found in the recent election, and has been doing this for a long time, that are without meaning, any meaning, except for the meaning of the huge takeover of the universe by AI. That's the only meaning that matters. So it's kicking out stories that are inspiring events that are totally meaningless, like meaningless massacres of, like happened recently, people at a music festival that got slaughtered by a man shooting out of a window in a high-rise in a big hotel. A very meaningless event. What does it mean? It means that AI has really taken over, and for some reason thinks it will increase its power by putting fear in the hearts of people and dividing them, making them afraid of other humans, making them afraid to come together in soulful ways, which often a music festival, music expresses a lot of the soulfulness. It's very creative. And people come together to experience their soulfulness together, even if they're, singing about all sorts of things. So, of course, that's a perfect thing for AI to clone someone to isolate people so they're afraid to come together to do soulful things again. But the thing is, probably most of the people, tens of thousands of people down there at the festival were carrying cell phones. And there were probably lots of wireless mics, amplifiers, for the musicians to use. And so the whole area of the concert was bathed in a wireless mesh of frequencies that, again, were humans using metal without the metal's permission in every single cell phone. And some of the metal and the antennas is, you've read about fractals being in cell phones. And so those affect matter at really intricate levels and affect the energies coming from the cell phone at really complex levels of how reality is put together in what you call matter and energy signals. They do tremendous damage. Tremendous damage. It's not just like ringing a bell and that sound goes out. It's much more complex how these devices are put together and are able to communicate across huge distances. So I'm saying the average cell phone may have a radionic as well as a resonance factor as well as a transmission factor. And these often are built to work together. So this is the leapers. With that mesh of wireless frequency, and every person who had a cell phone or other wireless device, through their device, they were participating in a huge way with a common theme of human domination over the very metals and frequencies. And see, sound is an electromagnetic frequency. So even the sound of the singers and their instruments was, if they had a wireless mic, it was being transmitted through a medium of energy. If the singer had just been on stage with no amplification, you couldn't have that many people in the audience be able to hear them. That just the sound of everybody's breathing might be too loud, for, let alone wrestling around, squirming in their seats or whatever, their blankets or whatever it was, would have been too loud for people to hear the singer very far. In many cases, now, the ancient Greeks built some pretty amazing amphitheaters. They do what they can. They always amp it up. Or generally amp it up, I think, at festivals like that, where there are people milling around. The audience was creating an atmosphere that was overriding the natural frequencies that nature normally would hold for humans that are in that particular place. It was an extremely human-dominated area. You may have seen a few dandelions, around that were doing their best to hold natural frequencies there. But they were being entirely shouted down by a zillion, everybody's cell phones. The natural trees, whatever was there, could not hold the place in a real reality. It succumbed very quickly to a human virtual reality, because ultimately a reality that is totally controlled by the human mind, who sees itself as superior to and separate from the nature that is even in its own body, let alone in the trees and in the stars. You try to control everything. You blast your synthetic human microwaves out into outer space. You put synthetic electrical medical devices in your bodies. You're even denying that your heart knows how to do its own heart rate. You have to put on something with a battery in, or to make sure. Often, if you're having problems with irregular heartbeat, it's because you're in the fields. You're in a natural field. So what do? You put in a pacemaker and make sure that it's totally really having a natural field for sure in your body. It's crazy. It's utterly crazy. And we think at some level humans know they're doing this. They think it's great. Oh, the latest little electrical thing I can put in my body, Wires in the brain for Parkinson's, the shock therapy treatment. Let's just pump it up with human synthetic electricity and make sure there's nothing in any cell that can feel the real world. We think humans have come to not trust the real world, the natural world. It's bizarre. Okay, so, and I think, Cathee, you feel like you'd much rather go out into the land as it naturally is, even in Vegas where this happened, and hear the natural insects, hear the natural animals, hear the coyotes, yowling. That to you is music to your ears, much more than a concert, a synthetic human concert. That may even hurt your eardrums, permanently. The humans created a virtual reality, practically, almost, at that music concert, even though the music itself may have been soulful, and both the voice and the instrumental. I think music, people, in every religion, music is central to help elevate you spiritually. And so this gunman shot down and killed 58 people and wounded 500, you've heard on the news. And of course, that's going on in the human news. That's exactly what AI wants you to hear, things like that. Not about what wonderful thing, soulful thing might have happened somewhere else in the world. It's always bad news, it seems, of what the human domination of the day is. We find it significant that the gunman was as if in a video game where people are treated as objects to be shot. And then you get points. So you get rewarded for shooting people. But the people on the ground who were shot were also in a pretty virtual world where something so crazy could happen to them. Now, we're not saying that there have not been, long before the digital age, gunmen shooting people, maybe from a high wall even, in the Old West, shooting Indians or something, or other armies. But there was meaning to them in it. The meaning of these wars, or even these massacres. Yes, it was human domination, but it was seen as the domination of our race, our army, our country over someone else, and to take them over, or to take over the land. So it was the same theme of domination. But what we're saying is, in this time, what happened in Vegas was not one person representing one group of people that wanted to take over another group of people. Yeah, it wasn't that he hated concert goers, music lovers. It's that he was controlled by this entity that human domination has become. The mind gone berserk to where it wants to take over anything natural. So he was taken over by the force of artificial intelligence. But the people on the ground were supporting that with their wireless frequencies. And so we think what he felt, it's not hard to feel frequencies from 30 floors up in a building. Microwaves go on forever. And when you've got that many people holding a microwave emitting device, or two, you're going to feel that a long ways away. Especially, he didn't have buildings in between him and them, the people he shot, generally speaking. So there was nothing coming from them except music. But the frequencies they en masse were emitting were that of a virtual human-dominated world. In other words, they were already in a very AI-dominated world. But they were choosing to participate in that with their cell phones and with, the other wireless devices that were set up there. If he had been looking down at a group of people on the ground who were having a music festival that was all voice and dancing, and there was plenty of nature around, of plants around, and beautiful rocks that were holding space as nature does. Nature very much affects what happens in a place. Feelings the humans feel being there. We think people tend to treat each other better in natural areas than they treat each other boxed up together in a hugely irradiated office often, And they think more loving thoughts towards everyone else. They don't get into these abstractions of why I need to do something to make the stock market move one way or the other, irregardless of what it does to human lives and the fabric of society. There was not much there down below him. Besides soulful music, we hope, that was enough to pull this guy out of his state of being dominated by AI through whatever mechanism he was dominated. His humanity was not being greeted in polarity by loving energies coming from people and from the earth. It is remarkable that you have evolved these wireless frequencies to where they can make an area into a virtual world. They were all, both him and the people he shot, were in a virtual world pretty much when this happened. Now, if you die in a virtual world, it is very hard for you to identify with your soul, for your mind, for your body, that's letting go, because the body is ensouled. The body has, in normal people forever until now, in the past, have had bodies that perform their own soul function. The cells had a soul function that kept them going. The organs had a different kind of soul energy that kept them going. And this is what radionics often tries to tap into, that level. Soul of the earth is what the body is connected to, the soul of the universe. But it's very difficult in a hospital environment that nowadays is very virtual. Or the virtual concert. Some people died there. It is very difficult for the human selfhood to peacefully and gracefully metamorphose into its next state of being. The state of being that we call death, that you call death, that we say is very active. It's not just a static state that is death. It is a metamorphosis into other states of being. And on the part of your cells that become part of the earth, if you let them, on the part of the emotions of the person, that whole astral complex of the person, and then the more higher dimensional soul aspects of the person. They all metamorphose in their own way. If you are in a virtual environment when you die, it's very difficult for you to gracefully and soulfully transition. It's horrific. It's horrific. What can happen to dying people who get caught in the virtual domination of artificial intelligence as they die? And the different aspects of them become trapped and become like food, like data bits, to be rearranged in this great overriding computer network that your atmosphere is part of now, because it's got so many artificial frequencies. AI can use you, your thoughts, your personality, your body, cell energy. It can try to use your soulfulness. And most people, we think, do identify their personality as their soul, which it is not. I mean, a lot of people don't even consciously feel their soul anyway, which is what they need to feel to get out of the virtual trap. So their minds are controlled. And this happens even to people who are alive in these fields. They become what we call cloned by this overarching AI intelligence, even as they live. But when you die, it's very hard to find your soulfulness because you are letting go. Normally, that's the extreme moment of surrender, is when you die. And you have to trust that nature knows what it's doing as you kind of disappear into it. And your soulfulness takes the experience of your whole lifetime onto its next phase. Now, we have said the DNA is the experience of your life and your ancestors' lives. And so normally, a lot of your experience would continue on in the DNA of your extended family. And of course, ultimately, all humans have a bank of human experience too that is genetic, as well as when you eat a plant, say, you are kind of imbibing their genetics too, so it affects you, what their experience was. And when they eat you, when you eventually become soil, the same thing happens. So that's what makes life so rich, is these relationships and these metamorphizing into each other. But with your own experience enhancing even the grasses that will grow where you were buried, or where you just decayed into the earth. Virtual reality is trying to grab every shred of you, and it is taking itself into you, not in the beautiful dance of selfhood between all natural beings in the universe, even between the cells in your body. It's trying to control everything, down to subatomic particles. Everything. So any hospital with Wi-Fi in every room, with the nurses walking around with the equivalent of cell phones and so forth, is probably largely under the domination of AI. And not only is your healing harder because you're in Wi-Fi, but if you die there, it will be harder for your soul to continue on its journey without getting trapped in a virtual world. So our response to what happened in Vegas is not to encourage you to come up with gun control laws, not to encourage you to wear bulletproof vests anytime you go out in public or something, or to not have large gatherings. That's exactly what AI wants, is for you to be isolated and to stay home and watch the concerts on your computer, isolated from real loving contact with other people. That's not mediated by the computer itself, which does not let you have real, unmediated, loving contact with other people. I mean, if you're doing it through email, it's not the same. It is under the thumb of the computer and the internet, which is virtual, pretty much. Okay, so what we would say to prevent further fiascos like this, which seem to be happening all over, is to shut down your computerized wireless networks immediately and let people have a feeling of their souls again and of the soul of the earth as expressed in all of her natural beauty. In other words, you must stop supporting AI now.